What is the most powerful weapon ever invented? Take a moment to think about it. Your mind might jump to the sharp edge of a sword, gleaming under a battlefield sun. Perhaps you think of the deafening roar of a cannon, a force that reshaped empires. You might even consider the terrifying world-ending potential of the atomic bomb, a weapon that holds humanity itself hostage. These are all formidable tools of destruction, capable of leveling cities and ending lives in an instant. They have defined wars, toppled dynasties, and redrawn the maps of our world time and time again. Each one represents a leap in our capacity for conflict and control, a testament to human ingenuity turned towards devastation. But the real answer is far more subtle. It is quieter, older, and honestly, infinitely more effective. The most powerful weapon in the long, often brutal story of human civilization is not made of steel or enriched uranium. It cannot be seen, touched, or weighed. It is a weapon that works silently, from the inside out, turning people against their own interests without them ever realizing it. This ultimate tool for control, the secret ingredient behind countless tyrannies and injustices, is something much simpler and far more insidious. The most dangerous and effective weapon humanity has ever wielded against itself is, and has always been, ignorance. This weapon doesn't need an army to be deployed. It requires no complex manufacturing or secret research facilities. Its power lies in its ability to prevent resistance before it even begins. Ignorance keeps people from asking the right questions. It stops them from recognizing the chains that bind them. It makes them accept their lot in life, no matter how unfair, as simply the way things are. While a gun can force a person to obey through fear, a carefully cultivated state of ignorance can make that same person obey willingly, even enthusiastically. It is the art of getting someone to help you build their own cage, and then thank you for the privilege of living inside it. Throughout history, the cleverest and most ruthless leaders have understood this fundamental truth. They knew that a population armed with knowledge, critical thinking, and a sense of their own rights is the greatest threat to unjust power. An informed public demands accountability, a curious public questions authority, an educated public dreams of a better world and has the tools to build it. Therefore, the first line of defense for any corrupt or exploitative system is not a wall or an army, but a carefully constructed veil of ignorance. It is the original strategy for domination, a timeless playbook for keeping the many subservient to the few. Now let's take this idea one step further. What if I told you that in many parts of the world, and in many corners of our own lives, ignorance isn't just a passive state of not knowing? What if it isn't simply a problem to be solved with better schools and more libraries? What if, for a select and powerful few, ignorance is not a bug in the system, but its most important feature? Imagine a scenario where keeping entire populations poor, distracted, and uninformed is not an unfortunate side effect of bad policy, but the very goal. Imagine that someone somewhere is getting rich off the fact that you don't know what's really going on. This is not a far-fetched conspiracy theory from a dark corner of the internet. This is the hidden reality of our global economy. It is the dark art of weaponized ignorance, refined and perfected into a highly profitable business model. The mechanics are simple but devastatingly effective. If a population is uneducated, they are less likely to understand complex financial deals that sell off their country's resources for pennies on the dollar. If people are constantly distracted by trivial entertainment and manufactured outrage, they won't pay attention to the politicians quietly dismantling their rights. If they are trapped in a cycle of debt and poverty, they will be too busy surviving to think about revolution. Think of it as the economics of control. In this model, knowledge is a liability, and confusion is an asset. A well-informed citizen who understands their nation's budget, who can read a legal contract, and who knows their history is a threat to the bottom line. They might demand higher wages, fairer trade deals, or investments in public health and education. These are all things that eat into the profits of those who benefit from the status quo. It is far more profitable to keep people just educated enough to do their jobs, but not enough to question the system they are working in. It is a delicate and deliberate balancing act. So, who are the beneficiaries of this global enterprise? The list is long and varied. It includes media group, silhouettes of diverse powerful people in montage, collage of world leaders, and business people at it distribute equally, corrupt autocrats who plunder their nation's wealth, while the public is fed a diet of propaganda and nationalism. multinational corporations that exploit lax labor and environmental laws in countries where citizens lack the education to fight back. The architects of our modern digital world, who have discovered that our attention is most easily captured and sold to advertisers when we are angry, divided, and stuck inside our own ideological bubbles. For all of them, your ignorance is not a tragedy, it's a commodity. The weaponization of ignorance is not just a relic of the past, confined to the pages of history books about ancient empires or slave-holding states. It is a living, breathing force that continues to shape our world in profound and often tragic ways. The strategy of keeping people in the dark is a global phenomenon, and its devastating results can be seen everywhere. We can see it in nations blessed with immense natural resources, yet whose people live in crushing poverty. We can see it in countries where political divisions are intentionally inflamed to distract from rampant corruption. We can see it in the echo chambers of our own social media feeds, designed to keep us agitated and isolated. In this essay, we are going on a journey to expose this hidden system. We will travel back in time to ancient Rome to understand the original blueprint for mass distraction, bread and circuses. We will visit the American South to see how making it illegal to teach a person to read was a cornerstone of maintaining the brutal institution of slavery. We will examine the chilling efficiency of the Nazi propaganda machine, which industrialized ignorance to manipulate an entire nation. These historical examples are not just stories. They are case studies that reveal a timeless playbook for control, one whose basic principles are still in use today. Then, we will bring our investigation into the 21st century. The methods have evolved, but the objective remains the same. The Colosseums have been replaced by glowing screens, and the Emperor's decrees have been replaced by complex algorithms. We will explore how modern economic colonialism works through debt trap diplomacy, where massive loans become a tool for seizing a nation's key assets. We will dive into the attention economy, revealing how social media platforms profit by keeping us angry and unable to engage in complex thought. We will uncover the paradox of the resource curse, where a country's natural wealth becomes a tool for oppressing its own people. But this is not just a story of despair. The most important part of our journey will be to discover the inspiring stories of those who broke free. We will look at the nations that stared into the abyss of ignorance and chose a different path. We will see how Singapore, a tiny island with no natural resources, bet everything on education, and transformed itself into a global powerhouse. We will learn from Estonia, a nation that escaped the Soviet shadow by embracing a digital revolution. And we will witness the remarkable rebirth of Rwanda, a country that rose from the ashes of genocide by choosing unity, accountability, and knowledge. These are the escape artists, and their stories provide a blueprint for a better future. To truly understand how ignorance operates as a weapon in the modern world, we must first look back. We need to examine the original blueprint, the foundational strategies that have been copied, adapted, and refined by those in power for thousands of years. The technology may have changed, but human psychology has not. The core principles of control discovered by ancient emperors and despots are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago. This is not a coincidence. It is a testament to their chilling effectiveness. The strategy of keeping people in the dark is in many ways the original political science, a dark art passed down through the generations of rulers who preferred obedience over empowerment for their people. This ancient playbook is built on a simple yet profound observation about human nature. A distracted, divided, and uninformed populace is a governable populace. People who are consumed by the daily struggle for survival, entertained by mindless spectacles, or taught to hate their neighbors, are far less likely to turn their critical gaze upon those who hold the reins of power. They are less likely to ask uncomfortable questions about where the nation's money is going, why the laws seem to favor the rich, or whether their leaders truly have their best interests at heart. Creating and maintaining this state of distraction isn't a side project for a clever ruler. It is the main event, the central pillar supporting their entire structure of authority. The playbook has several key chapters, each one a different method for achieving the same goal. One chapter is about distraction, providing just enough food and entertainment to keep the masses content and politically lethargic. Another chapter is about division, carefully stoking fear and prejudice between different groups so that they fight each other instead of their common oppressor. A particularly crucial chapter is about the suppression of knowledge, actively preventing people from gaining the intellectual tools, like literacy and critical thinking, that would allow them to recognize their own subjugation and organize against it. These are not separate tactics but interconnected parts of a single, comprehensive system of control. In this section, we will dissect 3 classic historical examples that perfectly illustrate this playbook in action. We will journey to ancient Rome to witness the masterful deployment of bread and circuses. We will then travel to the pre-Civil War American South to understand why making it a crime to teach an enslaved person to read was essential to the institution of slavery. Finally, we will analyze the terrifying efficiency of the Nazi propaganda machine in 20th century Germany. These are not just dusty history lessons, they are foundational case studies in the weaponization of ignorance, and their echoes can be heard all around us today. Let's begin our historical tour in the heart of the most powerful empire of the ancient world, Rome. The Roman emperors faced a constant challenge. How do you govern a massive, often restless population, many of whom lived in squalor while a tiny elite enjoyed unimaginable wealth? How do you prevent riots, uprisings, and revolutions when the inequality is so nakedly obvious? Their solution was a brilliant and cynical piece of social engineering famously summarized by the poet Juvenal as panem et circenses, or bread and circuses. This two-pronged strategy became the cornerstone of imperial control, a formula for manufacturing public consent on an industrial scale and ensuring political stability through mass distraction. The bread part of the equation was a massive government welfare program that provided free or heavily subsidized grain to the citizens of Rome. This wasn't necessarily an act of charity, it was a calculated political tool. A hungry population is an angry and unpredictable population. By guaranteeing a basic level of sustenance, the emperors removed the most immediate and visceral motivation for revolt. It was a direct transaction. In exchange for a full stomach, the people would trade away their political engagement. The daily concern of finding food was replaced by a dependency on the state, making the emperor not a distant ruler but a vital provider, the source of their daily survival. The circuses were the other half of this powerful formula. The Roman state sponsored spectacular, brutal, and utterly captivating public games. These were not small-town fairs, they were massive events held in architectural marvels like the Colosseum, featuring chariot races, exotic animal hunts, and most famously, gladiatorial combat to the death. These spectacles were designed to be overwhelming, to saturate the senses and numb the mind. For the average Roman citizen, the games were the ultimate escape from the drudgery and poverty of their daily lives. They offered a potent cocktail of adrenaline, tribal excitement, and gory entertainment that made political concerns seem distant and boring by comparison. This combination of free food and thrilling spectacle was a masterstroke of social control. The Roman masses were kept fed, entertained, and most importantly, docile. Why worry about Senate corruption or the emperor's decadent lifestyle when you could spend the afternoon watching a thrilling chariot race and know that your grain dole was secure? The bread and circuses model created a population of spectators, not participants, in their own governance. It was a calculated trade. The emperor provided basic comfort and thrilling distraction, and in return, the people surrendered their civic curiosity and their will to question authority. This ancient strategy remains the blueprint for every modern attempt to pacify a population through entertainment and welfare. Now let us move forward in time to a different empire, to the vast cotton and tobacco plantations of the American South in the 18th and 19th centuries. Here, the weaponization of ignorance took on a far more direct and brutal form. The entire economic system of the South was built upon the institution of chattel slavery, a system that treated human beings as property. To maintain such a monstrously unjust institution, the slaveholding class had to do more than just wield whips and chains. They had to forge chains for the mind. They understood, with perfect clarity, that the most dangerous threat to their system was not an armed rebellion, but a single, powerful idea in the mind of an enslaved person: the idea of freedom. To prevent this idea from taking root, nearly all slave states passed laws making it a criminal offense to teach an enslaved person to read or write. This was not a minor regulation or an afterthought, it was a central pillar of the slave system's architecture. Why was literacy so feared? Because knowledge is the first step toward liberation. A person who can read can access ideas beyond their immediate brutal reality. They can read newspapers and learn about abolitionist movements in the North. They can read the Bible for themselves and find passages about justice and liberation that contradict the twisted version preached by their masters. They can read a map and plot a path to freedom. The denial of education was a deliberate strategy to enforce psychological control. An illiterate person is isolated. They are cut off from the world of information, forced to rely only on what their oppressor chooses to tell them. This creates a closed system of information, where the master's word is law and reality. By preventing literacy, the slave owners aimed to crush the spirit, limit the imagination, and extinguish the hope of the people they enslaved. They wanted to create a permanent state of dependency, not just for physical survival, but for intellectual understanding as well. Ignorance was not a side effect of slavery, it was the point. It was a prerequisite for its survival. The famous words of Frederick Douglass, who escaped slavery and became a brilliant orator and writer, perfectly capture this truth. He wrote, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave." The slaveholders knew this instinctively. They understood that an educated mind could not be truly enslaved. It could conceptualize freedom, articulate injustice, and communicate with others to organize resistance. The fight for the right to read was, therefore, a direct fight for freedom itself. The brutal enforcement of illiteracy in the American South stands as one of history's starkest and most chilling examples of how ignorance can be systematically wielded as a weapon to maintain an economic system built on profound injustice. Our final historical case study takes us to 20th century Germany and the rise of the Nazi regime. Here we witness the ancient playbook of ignorance being supercharged by modern technology and a terrifyingly methodical psychology. The architect of this system was Joseph Goebbels, the Reich Minister of Propaganda. Goebbels was a master of mass communication, and he understood that controlling a modern nation required more than just bread and circuses. It required the total domination of the information landscape. His goal was to make the Nazi worldview the only worldview, to repeat the party's lies so relentlessly that they became accepted as undeniable truth. This was ignorance industrialized. Goebbels' strategy was built on a few core principles. First was the complete control of all media. Upon taking power, the Nazis quickly seized control of newspapers, radio stations, and film production. Independent journalism ceased to exist. All information flowed from a single source, the Ministry of Propaganda. This created a national echo chamber where the Nazi message was the only one people heard. Second, Goebbels believed in the power of simplification and repetition. He knew that complex issues were hard for the public to grasp. So, he boiled everything down to simple, hateful slogans, blaming Germany's problems on scapegoats like Jews, communists, and foreign powers. This constant barrage of simplified messages and hateful rhetoric was designed to bypass critical thought. The goal was not to convince people through reasoned argument, but to appeal directly to their emotions, their fears, their resentments, and their desire for a sense of belonging. Goebbels famously said, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." The Nazi propaganda machine was the ultimate proof of this cynical theory. It created a reality where up was down, war was peace, and hatred was patriotism. For a population that lacked sophisticated media literacy, this onslaught of misinformation was nearly impossible to resist. The result was the manipulation of an entire nation. The Nazi regime's propaganda did not just distract the German people, it actively reshaped their understanding of reality. It fostered a climate of intense paranoia and division, turning neighbors against each other and justifying unspeakable atrocities. It created a population that was not just ignorant of the truth, but actively hostile to it. This was the ultimate and most terrifying form of weaponized ignorance. One where the victims become passionate defenders of the very lies that are leading them to ruin. Goebbels' playbook demonstrated that when you control the information, you control the mind, and when you control the mind, you can make people do almost anything. The stories of Rome, the American South, and Nazi Germany are not isolated incidents confined to the past. They are, in fact, powerful demonstrations of a timeless playbook whose legacy endures to this day. Each example, though different in its context and its degree of brutality, reveals a fundamental truth about power. Controlling what people know, or, perhaps more importantly, what they don't know, is the most effective way to control them. These historical case studies, provide a lens through which we can better understand the world we live in now. The methods may have evolved from grain doles to data algorithms, but the underlying principles of distraction, division, and the suppression of knowledge remain, honestly, remarkably consistent. The Roman bread and circuses model is the direct ancestor of our modern entertainment-saturated culture. The endless stream of reality television, celebrity gossip, viral videos, and 24/7 sports coverage serves the same function as the Colosseum's games. It provides a constant, engaging, and ultimately trivial distraction from more complex and pressing issues. It keeps us focused on the superficial, making it easier for those in power to operate without scrutiny. When a population is more invested in the outcome of a singing competition than in the details of a new surveillance law, the ancient playbook is working exactly as designed, trading civic engagement for passive consumption. Similarly, the deliberate enforcement of ignorance seen in the slave states resonates in modern societies where education is chronically underfunded and unequal. When schools in poor neighborhoods lack the resources to teach critical thinking, when access to higher education becomes a privilege reserved for the wealthy, it creates a new kind of intellectual bondage. This educational gap ensures that a segment of the population lacks the tools to fully participate in the knowledge economy or to effectively challenge systems of power. It is a quieter, less explicit form of the same strategy, ensuring that some people remain unfit to question the status quo, thereby preserving existing economic and social hierarchies. Finally, the chilling efficiency of Goebbels' propaganda machine serves as a stark warning for our digital age. The principles of simplification, repetition, and emotional manipulation are now, frankly, supercharged by social media algorithms. These algorithms are designed to feed us content that confirms our existing biases, creating personalized echo chambers that are far more sophisticated than anything Goebbels could have imagined. Misinformation and hateful slogans can now be targeted with pinpoint accuracy and spread across the globe in seconds. The industrialization of the lie has gone digital, posing a profound threat to our shared sense of reality and our ability to engage in meaningful public discourse, proving that the ancient playbook is not only alive, but has been upgraded for the 21st century. The ancient playbook for weaponizing ignorance has not been discarded, it has been upgraded. The fundamental goals of control, distraction, division, and the suppression of critical thought remain the same, but the methods have evolved dramatically. In the 21st century, the crude tools of the past have been replaced by a sophisticated, often invisible machinery of manipulation. The wires of control are no longer physical chains or prison walls. They are the fiber optic cables that crisscross the globe, the complex financial instruments that indebt nations, and the silent, powerful algorithms that curate our daily reality. The new machinery of ignorance is sleeker, more efficient, and arguably more insidious than anything that has come before. This modern machinery operates on a global scale, weaving together economics, technology, and politics into a complex web of influence. Unlike the overt oppression of past eras, today's control is often disguised as progress, convenience, or even entertainment. We're not forced into the Colosseum, we willingly enter the digital arena of social media. Nations are not conquered by invading armies, they are captured by unpayable loans offered in the name of development. The genius of this modern system is that it often secures our compliance with our own consent. We opt into our own distractions, scrolling through feeds that are perfectly designed to keep us agitated and engaged, but rarely informed in a meaningful way. The objective is no longer just to prevent knowledge, but to overwhelm us with information. We are drowning in a sea of data, opinions, memes, and headlines, making it incredibly difficult to distinguish fact from fiction or signal from noise. This is a new form of ignorance. Not an absence of information, but a state of being so inundated with it that critical thinking becomes paralyzed. A confused and overwhelmed public is just as docile as an uninformed one. The modern architects of ignorance understand this perfectly. They have learned that the most effective way to hide a needle is not to lock it away, but to throw it into a giant haystack of other needles. In the following sections, we will pull back the curtain on this modern machinery. We will explore how debt trap diplomacy uses finance as a weapon to achieve neo-colonial ambitions, turning a nation's infrastructure into a tool of its own subjugation. We will dissect the attention economy, revealing the business model that profits from our outrage and division. We will investigate the tragic paradox of the resource curse, where a country's natural wealth is used to keep its population poor and powerless. Finally, we will step inside the digital echo chamber, examining how algorithms create personalized realities that reinforce our biases and make common ground impossible to find. One of the most powerful and subtle tools in the modern arsenal of ignorance is economic. It is a strategy that looks like a helping hand but operates like a hidden fist. This is the world of debt trap diplomacy. It begins with a seemingly generous offer. A powerful, wealthy country offers a massive loan to a poorer, developing nation, often for a grand infrastructure project, a new port, a high-speed railway, or a series of power plants. The leaders of the developing nation, eager to show progress and modernize their country, accept the deal. The terms seem manageable, and the promise of new infrastructure is intoxicating. The trap has been set. The problem is that these projects are often financed with opaque loan agreements and unrealistic revenue projections. The true cost is hidden in the fine print. When the project is complete, the developing nation finds itself unable to generate enough income to make the massive loan payments. The debt becomes an anchor, dragging the country's economy down. The creditor nation, which was so friendly and generous at the beginning, now returns to collect. But since the debtor nation has no money, the creditor demands a different form of payment. This is where the trap springs shut, revealing its true predatory purpose. Unable to pay in cash, the debtor nation is forced to hand over control of the very asset it just built. The port, the railway, or the power grid is leased to the creditor nation for an incredibly long term, often 99 years. This is not a conspiracy theory, it is a documented reality. The case of the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka serves as a stark warning. After Sri Lanka was unable to repay billions in loans to China, it was forced to hand over the port and 15,000 acres of surrounding land on a 99-year lease. A strategic national asset built with borrowed money was effectively lost, turning a sovereign nation into a tenant on its own land. This is a new form of colonialism, one that operates not with armies but with accountants and contracts. The local population is often kept in the dark about the true nature of these deals. They see the construction and hear the promises of prosperity, but they lack the financial literacy and access to information needed to understand the crippling terms of the debt. The ruling elite who signed the deal may have been enriched, but the country as a whole has been compromised. The debt trap is a perfect example of modern weaponized ignorance. It relies on a lack of transparency and financial understanding to turn a nation's desire for progress into a tool for its own economic subjugation. Section 3. The Attention Economy, Manufacturing Distraction. While debt traps ensnare nations, a different kind of machinery targets the mind of the individual. Welcome to the attention economy, the business model that powers the internet and has become the most pervasive form of circuses in human history. The core commodity in this economy is not a product or a service, but your focus. Companies like Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube are not primarily in the business of connecting people. They are in the business of capturing and holding your attention for as long as possible, and then selling that attention to advertisers. Your eyeballs are the product they sell. To maximize their profits, these platforms must maximize engagement. They need you to keep scrolling, clicking, liking, and sharing. Through years of experimentation, they have discovered a profound and unsettling truth about human psychology. Nothing captures our attention quite like outrage, fear, and conflict. Positive, nuanced, or complex content is simply less engaging than content that makes us angry or validates our deepest biases. The algorithms that govern our social media feeds have been meticulously optimized to promote the most emotionally charged material, because that is what keeps us hooked. They have become engines for manufacturing and distributing outrage on a global scale. This creates a vicious cycle. The more we engage with divisive content, the more the algorithm shows us. We are slowly pulled into echo chambers where our own views are constantly reinforced, and the other side is portrayed as monstrous, stupid, or evil. These platforms are not designed to foster understanding or constructive debate. They are designed to keep us in a state of low-grade, perpetual agitation. We become consumers of conflict, not citizens in a democracy. Our ability to engage in complex thought, to empathize with differing viewpoints, and to find common ground is steadily eroded with every scroll. We are being distracted, but also deliberately polarized for profit. The result is a population that is both distracted and deeply divided, a perfect state for the ancient playbook of control. While we are busy arguing with strangers online about the latest manufactured controversy, the real structures of power operate with less scrutiny. The attention economy functions as a massive, personalized coliseum, providing each of us with a custom-made spectacle of conflict that consumes our mental energy and civic focus. The emperors of Rome could only dream of such an efficient and captivating system of mass distraction. The cost is not just our time, but our ability to function as a cohesive society. Section 4. The resource curse, profiting from poverty. In a logical world, a country blessed with immense natural resources, like oil, diamonds, cobalt, or rare earth metals, should be wealthy. Its people should benefit from this natural lottery ticket, enjoying high standards of living, excellent public services, and a stable society. Yet, all too often, the opposite is true. This paradox is known as the resource curse. Many of the world's most resource-rich nations, particularly in Africa and Latin America, are plagued by extreme poverty, violent conflict, and corrupt authoritarian governments. This is not an accident. It is a feature of a system where ignorance is cultivated to protect immense profits. Here's how the curse works. The revenue generated from extracting and selling valuable resources is vast, often flowing directly to a small ruling elite and their foreign corporate partners. This small group has a powerful incentive to maintain absolute control over this revenue stream. The last thing they want is a well-educated, well-informed population that might start asking difficult questions. Questions like, where is all the money from our oil going? Or, why are our schools and hospitals falling apart when our country is so rich? Or, could we have a fairer deal with the foreign mining companies? To prevent these questions from being asked, the ruling elite has a vested interest in keeping the general population uneducated and disorganized. They deliberately underfund the education system, ensuring that most citizens lack the skills to analyze government budgets or understand complex international contracts. They control the media, feeding the public a diet of propaganda and nationalist slogans to distract them from the rampant corruption. They may even intentionally stoke ethnic or regional tensions, keeping the population divided and fighting amongst themselves rather than uniting against their common oppressors. For this elite, instability is more profitable than shared prosperity. An educated, empowered, and unified populace is the single greatest threat to this kleptocratic model. Such a populace would demand transparency, accountability, and a fair share of their nation's wealth. They would demand that the resource revenue be invested in schools, healthcare, and infrastructure for everyone, not just siphoned off into foreign bank accounts. The resource curse is perhaps the most tragic modern example of weaponized ignorance. It is a system where a country's greatest material blessing is twisted into a tool to actively perpetuate the poverty and powerlessness of its own people, all for the benefit of a select few. Section 5. The Digital Echo Chamber, Ignorance by Algorithm. The industrialization of the lie, pioneered by Goebbels, has found its most powerful expression yet in the digital age. The modern version of the propaganda machine is not a single, state-controlled radio tower broadcasting one message to everyone. It is far more subtle and personalized. It is the digital echo chamber, constructed by social media algorithms that learn our deepest biases and then feed them back to us on an endless loop. This is not just about showing us what we like, it's about creating a customized reality for each user. A reality in which our own beliefs are always right and opposing views are not just wrong but incomprehensible and malevolent. This process is largely invisible to the user. When you engage with a certain type of content, whether it's political commentary, a health trend, or a conspiracy theory, the algorithm takes note. It concludes that you like this type of information, and in its relentless quest to keep you engaged, it shows you more of the same. Over time, dissenting opinions and contradictory facts begin to disappear from your feed. They are not censored in the traditional sense, they are simply deprioritized into oblivion. Your information diet becomes narrower and more extreme, but you may not even notice. You just feel like you're finally seeing the world as it really is. This creates a profound and dangerous form of ignorance. It's an ignorance born not of a lack of information, but of a surplus of biased information. Within these echo chambers, misinformation thrives. Falsehoods, when repeated by many different sources all confirming the same narrative, begin to feel like established facts. This is how entire communities can come to believe things that are demonstrably untrue. The shared sense of reality that is necessary for a functioning democracy begins to fracture. We no longer just disagree on policy, we disagree on basic facts, making conversation and compromise nearly impossible. This algorithmic segregation is the ultimate realization of the divide and conquer strategy. It pits citizens against each other in a way that is far more effective than old-fashioned propaganda. The system doesn't need a Goebbels to tell everyone what to think. It allows us to sort ourselves into digital tribes that are then hardened and radicalized by the platform's own profit-driven logic. We become soldiers in a culture war we don't fully understand, fighting battles that enrich the platform owners while distracting us from a shared civic purpose. The digital echo chamber is the modern machinery of ignorance at its most sophisticated, turning our own psychology against us to create a more divided and therefore more controllable world. The landscape of weaponized ignorance from ancient Rome to the modern digital age can feel overwhelming and deeply pessimistic. The machinery of control is sophisticated, the profits are immense, and the cycle of distraction and division can seem unbreakable. But to believe that this is the only possible reality is to fall for the final, most debilitating lie. The lie that change is impossible. The situation is dire, but it is not hopeless. History is not only a record of oppression, it is also a source of incredible inspiration. There are nations that have faced the abyss of poverty, conflict, and systemic ignorance, and have chosen to write a completely different story for themselves. These are the escape artists. These countries provide us with living proof that the cycle of ignorance can be broken. They demonstrate that a nation's destiny is not predetermined by its geography, its natural resources, or even its tragic history. Instead, they show that the most critical factor in a nation's success is a deliberate, courageous, and sustained choice: the choice to invest in people. These nations looked at the ancient playbook of control, the one that preaches distraction, division, and suppression of knowledge, and they decided to do the exact opposite. They chose to embrace education, demand accountability, and foster unity. They understood that the only way to build a resilient and prosperous society is to create an informed and empowered citizenry. The transformations we are about to explore were not simple or easy. They were born from moments of profound crisis. The vulnerability of post-colonial independence, the collapse of an oppressive empire, or the aftermath of an unthinkable genocide. It was in these moments of near-total collapse that leaders and citizens alike were forced to make a fundamental choice about their future. Would they succumb to the old patterns of corruption and control, or would they dare to build something new? Their journeys were fraught with challenges and required immense national will, long-term vision, and a relentless commitment to their chosen path, often in the face of deep skepticism from the outside world. In this section, we will turn our attention from the problem to the solution. We will examine the blueprints for a better future provided by these remarkable escape artists. We will travel to Singapore, a tiny island that turned its people into its greatest asset. We will explore how Estonia threw off its Soviet past to become one of the most digitally advanced societies on Earth. And we will witness the astonishing rebirth of Rwanda, a nation that chose unity and progress in the shadow of genocide. Their stories are not just tales of economic success, they are powerful testaments to the liberating force of knowledge and the incredible potential that is unlocked when a nation decides to fight ignorance head-on. Our first case study in escaping the trap of ignorance is the city-state of Singapore. When Singapore gained independence in 1965, its future looked bleak. It was a tiny island with no natural resources to speak of, No oil, no diamonds, no vast tracts of fertile land. It was a small port city surrounded by larger, often hostile neighbors, and its population was a volatile mix of different ethnicities with a history of social unrest. By all conventional measures, Singapore was destined for failure, a prime candidate for the resource curse in reverse, suffering from a complete lack of resources. It had every excuse to become a poor, unstable, and insignificant dot on the world map. Faced with this existential threat, Singapore's founding leader Lee Kuan Yew made a revolutionary bet. He concluded that since Singapore had nothing, its people had to become everything. If the nation's only resource was its citizens, then that resource had to be cultivated into the best in the world. This led to a single-minded, relentless focus on two interconnected pillars: education and anti-corruption. The government poured its limited budget into building a world-class education system, one that was rigorous, merit-based, and designed to equip its students with the practical skills needed to compete in the global economy. The goal was to transform a population of low-skilled laborers into a disciplined, highly educated, and technologically adept workforce. This investment in human capital was protected by an equally ruthless war on corruption. Lee Kuan Yew understood that the profits from this new knowledge-based economy could easily be siphoned off by the same kind of kleptocratic elites who perpetuate the resource curse elsewhere. To prevent this, Singapore instituted draconian anti-corruption laws, paid its civil servants and politicians high salaries to remove the temptation of graft, and established a culture of absolute transparency and accountability in public service. This ensured that the fruits of the nation's hard work were reinvested into public goods like housing, healthcare, and infrastructure, rather than ending up in private pockets. The results of this strategy have been nothing short of miraculous. In just a few decades, Singapore transformed itself from a developing nation into one of the wealthiest and most advanced countries on the planet. They effectively turned knowledge into their most valuable natural resource. The Singaporean model is a powerful rebuke to the idea that a country needs material wealth to succeed. It proves that the most valuable asset any nation can possess is the collective intelligence, skill, and integrity of its people. By rejecting the politics of division and distraction, and instead choosing to invest everything in its citizens, Singapore created its own prosperity and provided a powerful blueprint for others to follow. Estonia, once a struggling post-Soviet state, chose a bold path after regaining independence in 1991. Instead of competing with larger nations, Estonia built the world's first digital society, e-Estonia. The government connected every school to the internet, and made digital literacy a core part of education. Today, nearly all public services are online. Citizens can vote, pay taxes, and start businesses from their laptops. This digital transformation slashed corruption and bureaucracy, making Estonia a model of transparency and efficiency. Estonia's story proves that radical access to information and digital empowerment can turn national weakness into strength. Rwanda's transformation after the 1994 genocide is one of the most remarkable in modern history. The new government outlawed ethnic divisions, promoted unity, and cracked down on corruption. Women were empowered, now holding the majority in parliament, bringing new perspectives to leadership. Rwanda invested in technology and infrastructure, aiming to become a regional tech hub. The result: rapid economic growth and a reputation for safety and modernity. Rwanda's rise shows how unity, accountability, and vision can rebuild a nation from devastation. Singapore, Estonia, and Rwanda each faced unique crises, but their paths to success share a blueprint. First, a relentless commitment to education, empowering citizens with knowledge and skills. Second, zero tolerance for corruption, ensuring public resources serve everyone. Third, a clear, ambitious national vision that unites people and drives progress. These principles, education, integrity, and vision, counter the old playbook of control. This is the universal blueprint for escaping ignorance and building a prosperous future. Throughout history, ignorance has been used to control and divide. Today, new tools, debt traps, the attention economy, digital echo chambers, continue this strategy. Yet, the stories of Singapore, Estonia, and Rwanda prove that knowledge, integrity, and vision can break the cycle. The real battle is not just global but personal. It's about the choices we make every day. The outcome will shape our societies, our democracies, and our lives. The fight between knowledge and ignorance is the defining struggle of our time. What can we do as individuals? The answer begins with reclaiming our own minds. First, curate your information diet. Seek quality sources and diverse perspectives. Second, invest in learning real skills, not just scrolling. Third, get involved locally. Attend meetings, ask questions, demand transparency. These small acts build resilience and accountability from the ground up. Personal liberation starts with knowledge, action, and engagement. The journey to a better society begins with you. The next two steps involve a fundamental shift in mindset, moving from a position of passive acceptance to one of active engagement with the world around you. The fourth step is to teach why, not just what. This is a principle that applies whether you are a parent, a teacher, a manager, or simply a friend. Our modern world often rewards rote memorization and the simple regurgitation of facts. This is not true learning. The real defense against ignorance is critical thinking. Foster curiosity in others and in yourself. When confronted with a statement, ask, why do you think that is true, and what is the evidence for that? Encourage a healthy skepticism and the joy of intellectual discovery. This practice builds minds that are resistant to propaganda and simplistic slogans. This shift in thinking leads directly to the fifth and most crucial step. You must choose to be a demanding citizen. The systems of control we have discussed thrive on a population that sees itself as passive subjects, as spectators to their own governance. You must reject this role. Adopt the mindset of an active stakeholder, a shareholder in the enterprise of your city, state, and nation. The institutions and the politicians who run them work for you. You do not work for them. This means you have not only the right but the responsibility to be demanding. Ask the tough questions about long-term planning, about education funding, about anti-corruption efforts, and about the deals being made in your name. This mindset changes everything. A passive consumer asks, what is on television tonight? An active citizen asks, what is on the agenda at the city council meeting? A passive consumer worries about the latest celebrity gossip. An active citizen worries about the local school's graduation rates. A passive consumer accepts the world as it is presented to them. A demanding citizen questions why the world is the way it is, and how it can be made better. This does not require you to be an expert in everything. It simply requires you to be curious, to be engaged, and to believe that your voice matters. Embracing this role is the ultimate antidote to the bread and circuses model. It is a declaration that you will not trade your civic birthright for cheap entertainment and mindless distraction. It is a recognition that true security and prosperity do not come from a government handout, but from a government that is transparent, accountable, and responsive to the needs of its informed citizens. Being a demanding citizen is not about being angry or cynical, it is about being hopefully and constructively engaged. It is the work of building a society that is too smart to be tricked, too united to be divided, and too engaged to be ignored. We stand at a crossroads. The tools of ignorance have never been more sophisticated. The attention economy relentlessly pulls at our focus. Algorithmic echo chambers threaten to tear our social fabric apart. The profits to be made from public confusion are astronomical. The forces that benefit from a distracted and divided world are powerful, and it would be easy to succumb to pessimism, to believe that the fight is already lost. But to do so would be to ignore the most powerful evidence we have, the evidence of success. The blueprint for a better future is not a theoretical fantasy, it exists. It has been tested in the real world under the most difficult conditions imaginable. Singapore did it. Starting with nothing but the will of its people, it built a global economic powerhouse on a foundation of knowledge and integrity. Estonia did it. Escaping the shadow of Soviet oppression, it leaped into the future, creating a digital republic that stands as a model of efficiency and transparency. Rwanda did it. Rising from the ashes of a genocide that horrified the world, it chose unity over division and progress over a past of hatred, achieving a rebirth that many thought impossible. These nations are not magical exceptions, they are proof of a principle. They are a testament to what is possible when a people and their leaders make a courageous choice to invest in intelligence over ignorance. The blueprint is there for all to see. It calls for an unwavering investment in education, a ruthless war on corruption, and a unifying vision for the future. These are the pillars that can support any society, regardless of its history or resources. They are the principles that empower individuals, build resilient communities, and create lasting prosperity. The success of the escape artists has exposed the central lie of the powerful, the lie that things cannot be changed. They have shown us that a nation's fate is not a matter of destiny, but a matter of will. The final question, then, is not whether the blueprint works, but whether we have the collective will to follow it. This is the question that confronts us today, in our communities and in our own lives. The battle between knowledge and ignorance is happening right now. It is happening in the budget allocation for your local schools, in the headlines you choose to click, in the conversations you have with your family and friends, and in the quiet moments when you decide to learn something new instead of scrolling through the void. The path is difficult, but it is clear. The choice belongs to us. Knowledge is power. Question, learn,